of this film we're going to be talking about. Most maybe can describe it as a cult movie, but it is not. I like how you said that this film is about the lies we're told, the lies we tell ourselves, the struggles to see the world the way it really is.
Yes.
That says a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were, you know, a lot of our work, we're big horror fans, we're big sci-fi fans and thriller fans, and I think a lot of our work kind of is rooted in using elements of the genre we love and then finding new ways to use those pieces to explore new things. And I think to us, the Aviary was really a chance to you know, tell a story that's sort of in the shape of a cult movie, so that someone knows where to file it, but really is a metaphor just for, you know, the fact that we live in a culture of influencers and followers, and it's very hard to keep track of sometimes where our or your opinion starts and someone else's influence begins.
Mm-hmm. What's your take on this, Jennifer, this film?
I mean, I agree with everything Chris just said. I think there are a lot of things that we were trying to do, like the nature of belief is really important to us. Like, we wanted to, like, part of why we set the story after the women have left the cult is we wanted to look at the immediate aftermath of that. Like, this is also where so many cult movies, like the beginning of our movie is where so many cult movies end. And we wanted to look at what happens to these characters after they're gone, even though they have physically left this place. How much of it is really with them? Have they really gotten out? So yeah, there's a lot. We like to think there's a lot at play in the movie.
That's actually something I wanted to touch, that you touched like usually it's about the cult, but we never know what happens, what the consequences are mentally for people. So was this the original idea from day one, or do you somehow just figured, okay, we're not going to cover what took place at the cult location, but after?
I think so. I think, you know, while we were researching the film, we watched a lot of documentaries with people who had left cults. And I think there was a lot of inspiration there. Because it's interesting hearing people who maybe they're 6 months out, maybe they're a year out, and then also people who are talking about something that happened to them 30 years ago. And you can just feel how much even a brief experience can have changed their lives. Because, like, what's so powerful about anything that's interested in how you think, anything that changes the way you approach something, I think can be really lasting.
Yeah, and I think we also, in doing all that research, you know, we wanted to try to focus on telling a story. Even in a lot of the best documentaries about survivors, I don't know, in our opinion, at least sometimes they're framed in ways where you go, oh, well, I wouldn't fall for that. I wouldn't get wrapped into that. And we really wanted to write two women who anyone watching the movie could see at least a part of themselves in in one of the two women, and really see how they're level-headed, smart, focused, driven women who, for reasons of their own that you come to understand over the course of watching them together for a whole movie, fell into this cult, because, like I said, I think we're all susceptible to falling into, you know, the clutches of someone or something. We live in a world where everyone is looking for someone to help guide them, shape them, especially in you know, the less religious world that we live in these days. Everyone's kind of looking for something.
Now, you guys are the writers also. How difficult and challenging was it to write a script where you have these characters hallucinating, kind of battling these thoughts and images are getting in their head at the same time and telling a story?
Yeah, I think it was challenging but fun. I think something we're playing with in the movie is not exclusively being in either of the leads' perspectives, which was something that we really enjoyed. Like sometimes it feels like you're in Jillian's shoes and you're watching Blair and you're interrogating what she's saying and whether that's truthful, and sometimes you're on Blair's side. And I think that's something we really felt new as we were like stacking the pieces of the script.
Yeah, that, I mean, I think even more so than the hallucinations and the dreams, I think keeping track of who knew what about who when was a tricky part. But I think once we had the answers for ourselves, it was just a matter of, it would have been very difficult if we'd had 4 or 5 people escaping this cult, but we had the 2. So, we were able to kind of track it with Post-it notes and note cards and make sure that it all held together. But yeah, I think part of the reason we wanted to keep it small and keep it between these 2 women was so that the audience could also hang on to enough of what was happening that it stayed tense. If you start adding more people to that, you start to dilute, then all of a sudden everyone's seeing something else and nothing's real and it's all in their heads. Where when you just have the 2 of them, it's a lot easier to play that game of ping pong with the audience of who's right, who's lying, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Now tell me about casting. How did you find your Jillian and Blair?
Go ahead, Jen.
We got really lucky. Malin was our first choice. We were right before the script was ready to go out. We were doing sort of like a final rewrite, and between us and the producers, we'd had a conversation about going to her first. So that last pass we were working on, there were even a couple lines in there or beats in the script where we were like, oh, like I would love to hear Malin deliver this line, or I think she could do something really interesting with the scene. And we sent it to her over the holiday break, and it was almost a month, and the producers were like, maybe let's start talking about like who do we go to next. And we got a call from her agent being like, oh, Malin read the script, she loves it, she wants a meeting. And we really hit it off with her, and like she's incredible in the movie. And then with Lorenza, it was very similar. We had seen a lot of her work, and that was a meeting between the 4 of us. And what was so great about that meeting was, there were a couple introductory things, and then we saw Malin and Lorenza start to talk to each other. And even though this was over Zoom, there was this feeling of like Chris and I just like sitting back and letting them do their thing, and seeing that even them having this like spark in chemistry over Zoom, we were like in person on film or on digital, like this is really going to work.
Yeah.
So I asked the ladies if they could opt to erase an unpleasant memory, if they would consider it. Now I'm going to ask you.
That's a good question. Yeah, there's probably one or two. That I would get rid of. I mean, particularly in this business, there's a lot of rejection. There's a lot of things that don't go well. So yeah, there's probably one or two in there that I could do without. But for the most part, I think anything that I'd be on the fence about erasing that didn't go well in my life, I've learned something from. So if I could find one that I didn't learn anything and just sucked, then maybe, yeah.
This is how much time Chris and I have spent with each other. My initial response was, yeah, like how productive was this negative experience? Did I learn? If I learned enough from it, you have to hang on to it probably. And if it was just a moment of extreme cruelty or embarrassment that led to nothing, those could probably go. Yeah, I'm excited to hear what Malin and Lorenzo said.
You have to watch the interview.
Yeah.
Well,
what's one of the challenges that you had while filming?
I mean,
go ahead, Jen.
Just the physicality of it was challenging because we were out in the desert, and every day was either extremely hot, extremely cold. There was a lot of wind. I am super fair, so I was just going through like buckets of sunscreen and hats. And there were a lot of like animals out in the desert. Our cinematographer Elias Molkin is terrified of snakes, so he and our snake wrangler became like very good friends. They would just sort of follow each other around.
Yeah, that was the hardest part. It was a lot of the journey was in many ways very real. So we had to power through, and luckily we had a lot more water than Jillian and Blair did, so we were all right.
Where were you guys filming? What was the location?
So we shot outside of LA. We were mostly in Acton and Agua Dulce, so about like an hour from like central LA, which was just far enough. We had looked at some places even further out that had, more or like different kinds of desert features, because we were trying to get as much like aesthetic diversity in our locations as we could. But it ended up being, we were able to find different looks on these two different like expansive properties, and sort of, keep the production as limber as we could, being in one place at the same time, or two different places at the same time.
Yeah, while still being able to string together those three. There's kind of three distinct looks, one for each act of the movie, and we were able to find them all in those two very large branch locations.
Wow, I never would have thought. I grew up in Lancaster, so I have to drive that way to see my parents, and I didn't recognize it. So right now when you're saying Acton Agua Dulce, I'm like, really?
Yeah, it's called, Bloom Ranch in Acton, and then basically right across the street from Vasquez Rocks. Like if you go across the highway, there's a couple private ranches along the side.
There's some great stuff out in Lancaster though. Like there are a lot of like crumbly rock places out there, and maybe that's what you haven't we went and looked at some of those. It was just going to be too much of a commute for our movie, and we couldn't ask people to do that drive and still be able to then do a long day in the desert.
Yeah, you don't want to go deep and find snakes either.
No, and that's why we had a snake wrangler. We literally had a guy whose job it was every time we were like, okay, we're going to shoot over here. He had to go in first with a stick and like make sure that there weren't any
like a special like snake stick, not
just
special,
like not a wooden, a hook. I don't know what it's called, but
I don't know the technical term for this piece of equipment.
He caught I was like, there's not that many snakes out here, and he caught a bunch of snakes. So good on him.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time. Congratulations on this film. I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.
I enjoyed it very much.
Good. I'm glad.
It made me think for sure.
Good.
Yeah, that's what we're after.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nancy.
Congratulations. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.